The storm clouds on the horizon seem to be darkening, and there's all kinds of challenges out there, political, economic, social, all kinds of things happening. Let's talk about some steps we can take to move forward. Hey, Provident Preppers, I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Kylene. Last night we had the wonderful opportunity to be able to go and consult with a successful friend of ours who wanted us to take a look at his food storage items and what he had prepped, because he feels very strongly that within the next 2 years, everything's going to fall apart. So he wants to be ready, and he wanted to know what he could do now while he still has the time. So we went into his home and we had actually a wonderful experience with him. He's doing great, and he has so many things that he's done and he's done right. But we did have a few things that we could recommend.
That's right, and he has made some serious progress. He's got the heart of a prepper, and he's not going to extremes, but he sees the reality that's coming at us, and he is doing everything he can as fast as he can, and we all have limitations, but taking those small, steady steps, and that's what he's been doing.
So we're going to share with you today some of the recommendations that we had given to him. The most important thing to think about right now is that we are focusing on basics, the very basics that you need to be able to survive. Once you have those basics covered, then you can go out and you can get the nicer things and do things that would enhance your program, but we always want to come down to basics first.
One of the first things that we noticed was maybe a need for a little bit more organization. Some of the things were on the floor. There was maybe not as much order to it as we would like, but sometimes that happens, and this is all a process. So that's one thing that I think would be really good, is make sure that we're doing what we can do in an organized way. If we have the ability to build or buy some shelves, that really helps. That gets those things off the floor.
The second recommendation that we gave him was concerning water, and he actually brought up water with us.
And he does have a pretty good amount of water stored, but he's on a community water system, and in spite of his best efforts to try and get them to buy some new pumps and spare parts, they don't want to spend the money, so he's a little bit concerned about his ability to get water in the future, because he is on that community system with his neighbors.
But he does have water barrels stored, and he's got a water filter. One of the things, though, that he's been storing are little chlorine water disinfection tablets. And the problem with those is that they have a shelf life of only 2 or 3 years before the chlorine is no longer, it won't disinfect the water, and that's why you get them, right? Which means that you have to buy and replace. So that's okay if you're like going camping a lot and you use them, but for most of us that aren't using that on a regular basis, calcium hypochlorite might be a better thing to put in our storage, because it does have a 10-year shelf life. We've got an entire video on it. Not just any calcium hypochlorite is going to do the job. So I'll leave a card in the corner so that you can go to that video and understand, what kind you need and how to use it and all that. But I think that would be really helpful for him.
The third thing that we talked about was his food supply. And as we mentioned, he's done a lot of good things, but maybe a little need to focus more on the short term. He's got a lot of long-term things, but maybe not quite as many short-term food items.
When we talk about short-term food items, we're talking about things you'd normally have in your pantry. Canned goods, your boxed cereals, your granola bars, those kinds of things. And what we encouraged him to do is, because he's got a really good long-term food storage stash, now it's time to just build that pantry. And there's, we recommend at least 3 months, but realistically, you could do a year. That's our goal, is to have a year supply of all the basics that I use all the time. So for instance, when ketchup goes on sale, I buy whatever it is that I need for a year. We use it all the time, so we don't have to worry about it going bad. My food supply and your food supply is going to be very different. The first thing that I asked him was what he bought every time he goes to the grocery store, and he said things like fresh meats, luncheon meat, breads, fruits and vegetables,
cereal,
granola bars. And so we worked with what he had. So I encouraged him to go ahead and start purchasing more granola bars, more cold cereal, and then think about what he would do for milk, because you can use shelf-stabled almond milk or you could use powdered milk, whatever it is that he can incorporate into that regular diet that his kids and him, they're already eating. He has protein powders and stuff. Just stock up a little bit extra on all of that.
And it really doesn't matter what somebody else's list says. What matters is what you and your family will eat and will nourish and sustain you. So make sure you're just getting the things that work for you. Of course, making sure that you're accounting for calories and nutrition, those kinds of things.
And then there's the freezer. Because he's looking at this short-term thing and he likes to eat meat and he usually buys fresh meat, well, let's look at the freezer, because your freezer can be part of your short-term food supply as long as you have the ability to keep it running so we don't lose all of that food. And he does have a generator and he has some backup fuel, but he doesn't have a longer-term solution for that. And we have a video about how to keep your freezer running and some of the things to do, and I'll leave a link to that. But the solar generator would be a really good idea in addition to that backup generator.
We talked about the possibility of him getting a solar power system of some kind, either a power station or a larger system, and that's something that we're going to pursue with him to make sure he's got that, not to run everything, but to run the basics and the critical needs.
In his longer term food storage, I encouraged him to store more of the fats, more of the oils, because that's something that's really hard to produce on your own, and it's just a basic necessity. So if he could just double or triple the amount of olive oil or coconut oil, things like that he has stored, if he suddenly, everything falls apart and he's doing all of his cooking on his own and they're not going out to eat anymore, that's going to be really important. Then we also noticed a little flaw in his long-term storage with the Mylar bags.
He had a lot of Mylar bags, a lot of good food, but it wasn't stored in any kind of a tote or anything. It's just there. And we didn't see any rodent problems, and it's obviously he doesn't have any rodent problems at this point, but we strongly encouraged him to get those into some kind of a heavier tote or a can or something that will protect them in case he does get a mouse or some kind of an infestation.
Yeah. One of the other things that he asked when he was showing us the Mylar bags, he asked if they were still good. Right? He wanted to make sure that he didn't have that false security. And some of them were from 2006. Those should be awesome because he's got it in this cool storage room. Open up a package, use it, make sure that it's good. He had a question about one was 7-grain cereal. So 7-grain cereal, if it's all the like rolled wheat and the rolled barley and the rolled oats, that's going to be fine. But if it's the 7-grain that has sunflower seeds in it, that's going to go bad a lot faster. So open up a package, start to use it, see if you like it, see if it still tastes good, because if not, you need to get rid of it and not have that false security just because it's there.
The next thing we looked at was fuel and how he would be able to cook and heat. He does have a little store of firewood in the backyard, but he doesn't have a wood-burning stove. So while he could do some basic cooking outside, that was one thing that we suggested. If he has the ability to put in some kind of a wood-burning stove that he could both cook on and could heat his home, that would be great.
Purchasing a Vesta and canned heat, I think, is one of the best solutions if you don't have a lot of money and want to make sure that you can both stay warm and cook your food. The Vesta is very small and you can cook the food on it, but it also has a top on it with what's the fan called?
Peltier device.
A Peltier device that blows the air, the warm air out. And canned heat, if you need to get the right kind, you can buy it online. It's much more expensive online. We purchase it at Sam's Club. It's little catering fuel. They're little cans, and we get the 6-hour cans. Don't waste your time with the 2-hour cans.
Don't make a mistake and think that this Vesta will heat your house, but it will heat a small area. The ability to heat and cook, that's an awesome product.
Okay, number 5 is about relationships, and we actually spent a lot of time on relationships with him because I believe that building good quality, strong relationships is one of the most important things to helping us to survive whatever challenges might come.
He was pretty candid about the fact that he's tried to get to know his neighbors, and not very many of them are even interested in thinking about being prepared, resilient, those kinds of things. So that was a little bit discouraging for him because he doesn't have a lot, but he does have a few friends that are like-minded and that are moving in that direction. So we just encouraged him to keep building those relationships.
And we do want to add one little caveat here. As you're building these relationships, you should not be disclosing all of your food storage, because it really turns you into a target, and we are already a huge target. So be very, very careful about, you can talk about it, but don't disclose everything. There is a game that is really cool. It's called A World Without the Rule of Law. It's really an interesting game, and we've played it with some of our friends, and it was interesting to us to be able to see what some of their ideas are. And sometimes you can know the people that you need to look out for just by interacting and talking about some of these things.
Number 6 is your skills. And we talk about this a lot because it's very important. And we all have a different skill set, which is why community is so important. And as we put these all together, we can do so much good and help each other, whatever those skills are. But you do need some skills, say, for example, cooking. Mama, talk to us about grid down cooking.
If you buy a Vesta, you need to practice with it. You need to understand its limitations. When you buy all this stuff, if you don't practice with it, you don't know what you're missing or how much fuel it's really going to use. We did a really cool experiment. It was our 30-day grid down cooking challenge, and we went for that entire month of November. We couldn't use our stove or our crock pot. It couldn't take electricity.
Microwave, whatever.
It was so frustrating. But we learned so much. And I would highly recommend that you go and follow those 4 weeks. We've got a little playlist, and I will leave that link for you. But we learned a lot. And afterwards, we calculated the amount of fuel that we had used, which is a really eye-opening thing, because you may think you have stored enough and you haven't. Or you may have stored way more of one thing and not enough of another, because you'll find that one of your devices you're going to like better than another. There's another playlist too. We did a 90-day no shopping challenge. We didn't go to the store for 90 days, and we just lived off of our food storage and our garden produce, what we could produce. And we found holes in our food storage, and that was super helpful for us. Go and check that out too and see how we made that all work, and you might learn something. But if you have the time and ability to practice any of those things where you go for a couple days without running water, or you don't shop, even for a week, even for 2 weeks, what are you going to learn? We're not predicting anything. We can't predict the future. And our future might actually be different than yours. We live in different places. There's different circumstances. We just want to make sure that we focus on the basics. Get what you can. Please don't go into debt. And none of this is important enough that you go into debt. Debt is just an enemy. So be really careful about that.
Now for our question of the day. Let's say you did have 2 years to prepare yourselves for whatever's coming. What advanced preparations would you make, and would you suggest for your friends? Share with us. And thanks for being part of the solution.